The first time I saw something was wrong with Obinna was the night of the full moon. Ifeoma and I were walking back from the village square. The air was thick with the scent of roasted corn and palm wine, and the laughter of the villagers still echoed behind us. The night was clear, the moon full and bright, casting long shadows on the narrow footpath leading to the river. We had just crossed the old Iroko tree when I noticed it. Our shadows stretched long and dark in the moonlight, moving with us as we walked. But Obinna had no shadow. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, even turned my head to different angles. Still, nothing. Ifeoma walked beside him, her shadow merging with mine, but Obinna's feet touched the ground without leaving a mark. A cold shiver ran down my spine, but I said nothing. Obinna was a man loved by many. He was strong, kind, and spoke with a gentleness that made even the elders listen. He had come to our village from across the great river, saying he had no family left and wanted to build a life here. The women admired him, the men respected him, and Ifeoma adored him. She was my cousin, more like my sister, and I had never seen her so happy. Her eyes sparkled when she looked at him, and he looked at her like she was the only star in the sky. But that night, as we walked in the silver glow of the moon, I knew something was wrong. I felt it deep in my bones. I did not sleep well that night. Dreams of shadows chasing me through the forest haunted me. And in every dream, no matter how fast I ran, I could hear a whisper behind me, Obinna's voice, calling my name. The next morning, I woke up unsettled. The village was alive with the sound of early morning activities, women pounding yam, children chasing chickens, men preparing for the day's work. But my mind was clouded with the eerie feeling from the night before. Ifeoma hummed happily as she braided her hair outside our hut. She looked at me and laughed. "You look like you fought with a spirit in your sleep. What troubles you?" I hesitated, then shook my head. "Nothing. Just strange dreams." "You always dream too much," she teased, throwing a small pebble at me. But as the day passed, I could not shake the unease. Every time I looked at Obinna, my stomach twisted. The way he moved, so light, so effortless, it was almost as if he was floating. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself that maybe the lack of sleep was making me see things that weren't real. That evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, I heard it again. A whisper in the wind. I was fetching water from the river when the breeze suddenly grew cold. The trees rustled, but the sound was different. It was not the usual song of the wind through the leaves. It was a voice, low and eerie, weaving through the air. "Leave, before it is too late." I dropped the water pot with a gasp. My heart pounded as I looked around. The river was empty. There was no one there. Only the whispering wind, carrying a warning that I did not yet understand. The days passed, but the unease in my heart did not. I watched Obinna closely, searching for anything that could explain the strange things I had seen and heard. He laughed with the villagers, helped the elders, and charmed the children with stories, but I could not shake the feeling that something was not right. One evening, I decided to speak to Mama Ezin, the oldest woman in the village. If anyone knew about spirits, it was her. She listened as I spoke, her face unreadable. When I finished, she was silent for a long time before finally saying, "Some things walk among us that should not be here." Her words sent chills down my spine. "What do you mean?" She stirred the fire in front of her and sighed. "Many years ago, there was a boy named Obinna who lived across the river. He died in a great fire while trying to save his father. Some say his spirit never found rest." I felt the blood drain from my face. "But that cannot be. Our Obinna is alive. He eats, he speaks, he—" "Not all spirits are as you think," she interrupted. "Some do not know they are dead. Some long for what they lost and return to the living. I left Mama Ezin's hut feeling cold. My heart pounded as I walked back to our compound. The wind had picked up again, whispering through the trees. And this time, the voice was clearer. He is not who you think he is. Terror gripped me as I stared at the grave. My chest tightened, and my hands trembled. If Obinna was dead, then who, or what, had we welcomed into our village? I had to get back. Ifeoma was in danger. I turned and ran as fast as my legs could carry me, the wind howling in my ears. The whispers followed, urgent now, pushing me forward. Before it is too late. By the time I reached the village, my breath was ragged, my legs weak. The sun was beginning to set, casting an eerie orange glow over the rooftops. I raced past the huts, ignoring the confused stares of the villagers. Ifeoma was sitting outside, laughing with Obinna. The sight of them together sent a fresh wave of panic through me. Ifeoma, I gasped, grabbing her wrist. We need to talk. Now. She frowned, confused. What is wrong with you? Obinna smiled. You look like you've seen a ghost. I flinched at his words. He had no idea how true they were. Pulling Ifeoma aside, I whispered everything, Mama Ezin's warning, the whispers in the wind, the grave with his name on it. She shook her head. This is madness. Obinna is alive. You're just scared because you don't trust him. Please, I begged. Just watch him. Watch carefully. There is something he is hiding. Ifeoma sighed but nodded. Fine. I will watch. But I know you are wrong. That night, we washed. And what we saw changed everything. At midnight, under the full moon, Obinna stood by the riverbank. His reflection did not appear in the water. And then, slowly, he began to fade. Ifeoma and I stood frozen by the riverbank, watching in horror as Obinna's form flickered like a dying flame. My breath caught in my throat. This was no illusion, no trick of the moonlight, he was fading. Ifeoma's grip tightened on my arm. This cannot be. She whispered, voice shaking. He is standing right there. But he wasn't. Not really. Not fully. Obinna turned, his eyes glowing with a strange light. Why are you both staring at me like that? His voice held the same warmth as before, but now, it felt different, hollow, distant, like an echo from another world. I wanted to run. Every part of me screamed to flee, but I couldn't leave Ifeoma behind. We need to go, I managed to say, pulling her away. Now. Obinna took a step forward, but before he could reach us, a gust of wind swept through the trees, carrying with it a whisper, he does not belong here. Ifeoma finally saw it. Truly saw it. Her eyes widened in terror, and she staggered back. Obinna, what are you? But he only looked at her with sorrow. I don't know anymore. We ran back to the village, hearts pounding. We needed answers. Ifeoma was trembling beside me, and for the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. Mama Ezin was waiting outside her hut, as if she had known we would come. You have seen the truth now, she said, her voice heavy with knowing. I nodded. What do we do? She ushered us inside and handed us kola nuts. Eat, she instructed. You will need strength. Ifeoma hesitated before taking a bite, her hands shaking. Is he dangerous? Mama Ezin sighed. Not all spirits are. Some only seek what they have lost. But the longer he stays, the more dangerous he becomes. His soul is trapped between two worlds. And soon, he will no longer remember that he was ever human. My stomach twisted. How do we send him back? The old woman leaned in. You must go to his village. To the place where he died. Only there can his spirit be released. But beware, Child, the dead do not like to be disturbed. The next morning, we set off. The village of Obinna's past lay across the river, through dense forest filled with the whispers of unseen spirits. Ifeoma clung to her resolve, though I could see the doubt in her eyes. What if he follows us? She asked as we walked. Then we will know for sure what he really is, I said, though the words felt heavy on my tongue. The journey was long. The sun was high when we arrived at a clearing where only charred ruins remained. This was Obinna's home, burned to the ground 5 years ago. Ifeoma's breath hitched. This is real. This is true. But before we could take another step, the air grew colder. The trees whispered, and a shadow moved between them. We were not alone. A deep voice rumbled from the trees. Why have you come? A figure stepped forward, cloaked in shadows, eyes glowing like embers. He was tall, ancient, and radiated a power that sent chills through me. I had heard of them before, the guardians of the dead, spirits who ensured the departed remained in their rightful place. We need to free Obinna, I said, my voice barely steady. The guardian studied us. And what if he does not wish to go? Ifeoma's hands clenched at her sides. Then we will make him. A long silence followed. Then, the guardian nodded. Very well. But once the path is opened, there is no turning back. He raised a hand, and the ground trembled. A faint glow shimmered over the ruins, and suddenly, we were no longer in the present. We were in the past, the day of the fire, watching it all unfold. And standing in the flames, was Obinna. The flames roared, consuming everything in their path. The village that had once stood here was now a battlefield between life and destruction. Ifeoma and I stood frozen, mere spectators to a past that was not our own. Obinna was there, alive, or at least the version of him that once was. He ran toward a burning hut, his eyes filled with desperation. Father, he cried, his voice raw with panic. Through the thick smoke, we saw the shadow of an older man trapped inside, coughing, reaching out. Obinna did not hesitate. He charged into the inferno. The scene shifted, moving faster than time itself. The hut collapsed. The flame swallowed Obinna whole. A scream echoed through the sky, piercing and haunting. Then, silence. And suddenly, we were back in the present, standing among the ruins. Ifeoma trembled beside me, tears running down her face. He died trying to save his father. I swallowed hard, my own throat tight. But why is he still here? The guardian's voice was calm but firm. Because his soul is bound to the moment of his death. He cannot cross over until he accepts his fate. A gust of wind rushed past us. And then, behind us, Obinna stood, watching. Why did you bring me here? Obinna's voice was strained, his face unreadable. Why are you doing this? Ifeoma stepped forward, her hands shaking. You have to let go, Obinna. You are not alive. His eyes darkened. That's a lie. I walk, I speak, I love, how can I be dead? The guardian sighed. You linger because of unfinished longing. You refuse to leave when the fire took you. You refuse to let go of life. Obinna turned to Ifeoma, pleading. Ifeoma, tell them. Tell them I am real. Tears filled her eyes. I wanted you to be real, she whispered. I wanted it more than anything. But the truth is here. I saw you die. We all did. Obinna took a step back. The earth beneath us quivered. The trees groaned as if they, too, mourned the weight of this truth. No, he whispered. No, no, no. But the past does not lie. Obinna's form flickered, unstable, as though the very fabric of his existence was unraveling. He clutched his chest, gasping. I don't want to go. I don't want to disappear. The guardian raised a hand, his voice steady. You will not disappear. You will find peace. The pain, the longing, it will all end. Obinna turned to Ifeoma one last time. And what if I don't want peace? What if I want you? Ifeoma covered her mouth, her sobs barely contained. Then you are only holding us both in a world that isn't real. The sky darkened. The wind howled through the trees. The village ruins trembled beneath our feet. Obinna clenched his fist. For a moment, I thought he would fight. That he would refuse to accept his fate. Then, his shoulders sagged. His expression softened. The fight drained from him. I wanted more time, he murmured. Ifeoma reached out, her fingers barely brushing his. I know. And with that, he closed his eyes and faded into the wind. We stood in silence, watching the last trace of Obinna disappear. The air was still. The guardian bowed his head. It is done. Ifeoma dropped to her knees, sobbing into her hands. I knelt beside her, my own heart heavy. He's at peace now. She nodded, unable to speak. The guardian stepped forward. You have done what many could not. You have freed a soul trapped between worlds. And now, you must return home. The journey back to our village was quiet. The sun was beginning to rise, casting golden light over the trees. The whispers in the wind were gone. The air felt lighter. When we reached the village, Mama Ezin was waiting. She looked into our eyes and nodded. You have done well. We had come back changed. The village would never know the full truth of what happened. But Ifeoma and I would never forget. Obinna's story had ended. And ours was just beginning. Time passed, but the memory of Obinna lingered. The village spoke of him in hushed tones, as if his spirit still watched over us. One evening, Ifeoma and I sat by the river, the same river where we first saw the truth. I still dream of him, she admitted, staring at the water. Sometimes, I think I hear his voice in the wind. I did too. But I didn't say it aloud. He wanted to leave, I said instead. But in the end, he chose peace. Ifeoma nodded. I hope he's happy. I think he is. A gentle breeze rustled through the trees, warm and familiar. For the first time in a long time, the wind carried no whispers, only peace. And we let it carry us forward, into the future, where the past could no longer hold us back.